Peter Keller.
Good afternoon to Georgia and to Europe. Good morning to America. The COVID-19 pandemic represents an unprecedented challenge for the museum sector. In March and April, 95% of the museums worldwide were closed. The lockdowns started in China in January, in Europe in March, and they are still going on in the Americas. Museums have reopened in China since March, in Europe since May, but many of them still face difficulties to work under the new conditions. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, the International Council of Museums has responded to this challenge. ICOM immediately published a statement regarding funding, calling upon governments to include the museum sector in their relief plans. We also published a guideline and a model letter for museums to advocate their cause, to address and convince political decision makers to support museums. With the help of our network and partners, ICOM published recommendations to deal with the unknown situation. Together with the ICOM committee, ICOM CC, we edited recommendations regarding conservation, with ICMS, MC and Interpol recommendations regarding security during the lockdowns. As nobody had an overview about the situation and the consequences of the lockdowns for museums and museum professionals, we launched a worldwide survey among members and museum staff in April. It was an immense success with 1,600 answers, showing that the consequences of the pandemic and the lockdowns for the sector will be serious. Until now, only a few of the permanent staff members of museums have lost their job. 23% of the freelance museum professionals have seen their contracts not renewed. 83% of the respondents of the survey expect museums to reduce activities, 30% expect museums to reduce staff, and 13% expect museums to be closed permanently. The situation is very different from country to country. In general, when museums rely on public funding, in particular on visit-generated income, such as ticket and shop sales, the impact is stronger. When museums are funded by public authorities, the sector is less affected yet. Thus, in the United States of America, 1/3 of the museums is expected not to reopen. In the Netherlands, 1/4. The first museum to close permanently was the Handbag Museum in Amsterdam, end of April. In Denmark or France, the impact is still low, but will increase when public budgets shrink because of the expensive emergency programs of national, regional, and local governments. Museums in tourist regions are more affected than museums with less tourists among their visitors. Tourism has changed, if not disappeared, and this situation will last 4 to 5 years. The airlines, for example, expect a return to the former level of traffic in 5 years only. Likewise, big museums can expect visitor numbers as before, maybe in 2024, if there isn't a second wave of the pandemic. However, the museum sector is resilient and flexible. At least 15% of the museums increased their digital communication activities with a focus on online access to collections and newsletters in Europe and Latin America, and with a focus on live events in North America. Social media activities increased at a global level for more than 50% of the museums surveyed. Museums must now develop new strategies for the future. After the practice-oriented first responses, ICOM has opened a second phase and started a series of webinars. The first webinar looked into the reopenings and allowed to exchange experience from countries and regions where museums are already open again and countries where they are still closed. The speakers from China, Cameroon, Austria, and Colombia, thus Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America. The webinar was broadcasted in ICOM's 3 official languages, English, French, and Spanish, and had 3,000 viewers around the world. The next webinar shall deal with the challenges to reach out to a local public under the conditions of a pandemic. exhibitions and programs for local communities, school public museums outside their walls. Museums are active and innovative, and I'm sure they will adapt to the new situation. The museum of the 21st century will be more inclusive, more digital, and more sustainable. Thank you for the invitation and for the organization of this webinar, and thank you for listening.